The three-day G7 summit begins Thursday, but it substantially is all on one day, Friday. The opening on Thursday, beginning 10:30 a.m. local time, is ceremonial really. The heads of the G7 governments turn up one by one, grandly on camera, then pose together for a G7 family photograph, as it's called, before getting into sessions that are not the most contentious. There will be discussion on Africa. The right things will get said again, no doubt. There will be talk of development, discussions on climate change. Over climate change, we are likely to hear the right things said, but well short of actionable consensus that all nations together can take. And this is, of course, the one issue where anything short of wide agreement is agreement too short. A lunchtime discussion on Gaza follows, and again that is not expected to add much to a US-initiated peace move and to the intense diplomacy underway involving Israel, Hamas, the US and a number of regionally influential nations. Then President Zelensky will arrive to a hero's welcome. He always does on such occasions. Pledges of support to Ukraine will be re-emphasized. These will matter only to the extent that they can add substantially to commitments already made and announced. Then more ceremony, G7 flag ceremony, then another group photograph before the heads of government take off by helicopter to a grand dinner in Brindisi, furthest to the south here in Puglia. Friday is when the quarrels really kick in, when the debate moves to immigration, and that is of concern immediately to the European members of the G7, to France, to Germany, Italy, of course, and to the EU itself that is also represented, and also Britain as a member from Europe, even though no longer a member of the European Union. All these European countries and the EU members represented directly or through the EU are directly affected by this issue, and the big test for Giorgia Meloni's Italian presidency will be to see if steps could be taken towards a European consensus. The US has its own issues with migration, but that is for the US to deal with nationally, not through the G7. The next big mountain to confront on Friday has been called the Indo-Pacific and Economic Security Session, read China. And there will be limits to any consensus that could be declared given the diverse views on the best way of dealing with China. Any agreement that gets too broad on China or anything really would really be a toothless agreement. The G7 has been very productive of such agreements. This time, no one really is expecting any big step forward together on some bold new China policy to emerge through the G7. Friday is also the day of the outreach part of the program, as it is meaningfully called, meaning that the non-G7 countries invited are being reached out to for a bit, not quite included in the inner sanctum of the original 7. Finally, if anyone was forgetting that this is all happening in Italy, the Pope steps in for his views, among other matters, on artificial intelligence. On AI, the last G7 in Japan made proposals on responsible conduct. Italy will look to take those forward, and we will know from the host's statement at the end of Friday whether anything very definite and again actionable resulted, or whether this turned out to be more of the vague in the usual way. This will be the day for many of the bilaterals, even though it is the following day, the third day, Saturday, that has formally been kept for bilaterals. Many are certain to happen on Friday or perhaps even earlier by way of those pull-asides, as officials like to call them, short exchanges agreed sort of last minute, and those will necessarily be negotiated directly between the officials accompanying the leaders. And that is when to watch out for sparks flying, to the extent those sparks find any public viewing at all. At the end then, that question again, why have a G7 summit at all? Unless Italy can produce something here to remember more than the dance and the concert we will see at the conclusion of the summit.